Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SportsGamer. My name is Tuki, and this is the Wraparound, a little show where we recap everything going on within the ECL and its 5 divisions. And admittedly, it's a bit of a lie to call this a little show. When you are talking about 5 divisions, it takes a while to go through everything. So what do you say we get right down to business? We'll cut out all the fluff today for this week's show, and we will get right down to business. And we kick things off with the ECL's top division, the Elite division. Now, much like I did for last week, we are going to sort by points per game. Of course, this early on in a season, it is more, about the pace when you have some teams that have played as many as 12 games, others have played half of that. So we start off with Parasite, who have continued to hold on to their top spot in the Elite division, maintaining the highest goals for per game pace, up to 5. They had 4 through week 1, so that offense is getting better, and they take over first place in having the lowest goals against average at an even 1.0. They have the league's top power play percentage at a 66.67, a perfect penalty kill, and they maintain the top face-off percentage in the league. It has been dominance from one of the heavy favorites in this particular division. And you get to talking about the lineup as it is. Now, no disrespect to Tombo, but it does go to show, as I'm going to talk more about the other 4 guys in depth, just how strong of a lineup this is, that someone like Tombo's a little bit overshadowed. You have Nicky Dangles, who has moved into first place in outright scoring with 30 points on the season. He is still top 9 in goals as well, and is tied for first place in assists with 19. Vatu has moved up from 8th in scoring to 4th with a 14-point week, from 12 points to 26, and has moved up from 7th in goals and is now 14th after an 8-goal week. Benito is now tied for 6th in scoring and 7th in goals with those 12. Temu on defense moves from a tie for 8th place in defensive scoring to outright in 3rd place. He is also tied for 1st in goals amongst defensemen. Again, an incredibly stacked lineup, and it doesn't change with the goaltenders either, as you have Nike, who has moved from 3rd place in save percentage to 1st, and Pensere up from 5th to 4th in that category. Now, next week, we will start to focus on goalies who have played at least a third of their team's games. We will be talking about some goalies today that have high save percentages that may have only played, 2 to 3 games, maybe 4 so far, like these guys. But that way, too, we're factoring in predominantly the starters or the 50-50 tandem splits for the most part. But all things considered, again, a tremendous start for Parasite. We move to the team in second, Voitamaton, a 1-place advancement up from 3rd. They are now in 2nd place in the Elite division, led by Eki, who was tied for 2nd in scoring last week. He's now 5th with 25 points. Tempinen maintains a spot in the top 10 in terms of scoring and goal scoring. Jamal the Man moves from 6th place in defensive scoring up to 4th. There is a massive logjam for 5th, by the way, on 12 points. You have Nordsman on Roots, Nwari Jamal on Mustakalta, Flyer Kungan as well here on Voitamaton, and both Easy, Sniper, and Sisu of Goons. So a lot of heavy competition amongst defensive scoring. You do have Potzloff drop out of the top 10 in scoring and goals, but the fact that this team moved up a spot is very promising, because if you get Potzloff going back in full form, the team's going to be flying at that point. And then, of course, Hans Salinho in goal. He does drop from 1st place in save percentage down to 3rd, but still has a very stellar 86.67 percentage. And, of course, Sande behind him, not too bad either. So a strong week for Voitamaton. Mustakalta drop 1 spot down into 3rd place. Worth noting, they do still have a perfect penalty kill on the season, and they are led in scoring by Aro, who is 3rd in scoring outright. He was tied for 2nd in goals at the end of week 1 with 8. He is now in 1st place alone with 19 goals. What a week for Aro, despite the fact, again, that they lost a spot in the standings. You have Mise as well, who goes from being tied for 3rd in D scoring up to 2nd place with 17 points. I think maybe where they lost some ground, Alupekas falls out of the top 10 in goals. I'll be intrigued to see if he can kind of get that form back with his shooting percentage, now the lowest amongst the forwards here from Mustakalta at just under 18%. In goal, worth noting, maybe an early favorite for Rookie of the Year, but Latve, he is still up there for save percentage. Don't be surprised if he's top 5 once again, once that gameplay limit becomes active next week. Still very, very strong numbers for him. Speaking of very strong, Totarit moving up 3 spots from 7th to 4th, and a couple of key players to talk about for them. Oyala, who was tied for 6th, or is tied for 6th in scoring with 24 points, and is also top 9 in goals with 11. Profilipaki moves up and is now tied for 8th in scoring with 23 points. And then there's the defensive side of things, not just amongst the actual defensemen, because we have to talk about Harlow and Sega Sormi, who are both tied for the league lead in block shots. Sega Sormi held that title outright in week number 1, and it is worth noting for Sega Sormi tied for the league lead in goals amongst defenders with 3. So a very strong week for Totarit, getting back towards the higher end of the standings where a lot of people expected them to be. Now, maybe who people didn't expect to see up this high, I mean, some people did, but, you know, I think there was some sarcasm with it perhaps. The Polski boys move up 6 spots from number 11 to number 5, and it is off the back of 3 key players here. Tunkelia, their leading scorer, who is now top 9 in goals with 11 on the season. Brokala rights the ship on faceoffs, no longer the worst win percentage in the league. And then in goal, Mastari Tiku as well continues his hot start to the season and takes the outright lead in shutouts with 2 on the campaign. So a big-time season for the former pro champions in Polski boys. Up next, initially, it was the Falun Coal Miners, and are we sorted like we're supposed to be? Aha, it is still the Falun Coal Miners. I was going to say, everything else was still accurate. Let's talk about the Falun Coal Miners, only dropping 1 spot from 5th down to 6th. So after a strong start to the season, they hold and have that stability. Key player for them this week, yet again, there is a name change from Smake to Leafnoa, which, sure, why not have a midseason name change? You're making tremendous friends with the casters, let me tell you. And then Stromman, I notice, has a name change too listed here. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But the former Smake went from being tied for 8th place in goals to now in 6th outright with 13. And of course, we've talked about it all season long, the increased focus that we have on our social aspects of what we're doing here. And again, we're asking people to share their highlights, their lowlights, whatever it may be, using the hashtag ECL25 clips. And of course, the Falun Coal Miners have done just that, as you've been watching this clip in the background of some interesting action for them from the week, to say the least. So again, the Falun Coal Miners, strong week, still performing very, very well.
All the time, and that's just a real nice gift to get the apple on that one.
Grabs the puck in the defensive zone. Oh, he hammered him.
Oh, he knew exactly what he was doing going into this along the boards, James. I love that it was a clean hit. He finishes it off perfectly.
Tosses it to Soderlund. Grabs control of it at the point. Rips it. Pistols! And there's the hat-trick and let those shovels fly.
Anytime.
Feeds the puck over to Soderlund. Still has possession. Give it a stick. Stands your own team and these fans don't want to go home yet. Listen to this place.
One of the teams that suffered a decent drop this week, though, in 7th place, it is Exon, down 3 spots from 4th place into 7th. in terms of kind of what went right for them, not a ton. Like you look at, say, someone like Domi, who does have the highest passing percentage in the league at 89%. You know, you still have an incredibly talented group of players, but it's been the lack of scoring, which is surprising, especially because in week 1, Moja was top 10 in scoring and goals and is now no longer top 10 in either of those categories. So Exon has some things to figure out. Save percentages also aren't as high for goaltenders of that caliber. Something just quite hasn't clicked for them yet, but they are only a third of the way through their season. And then we have Goons. If the season were to end today, they would be in that 8th spot. They move up 1 spot from number 9, despite still having the most penalties in the league, because of course they do, but they are still also the most physical team in the league with 320 registered hits. So it kind of goes hand in hand there. But looking at some of their key players, we've mentioned a few of them already, but we have Kontala, who is still top 7 in goals, did drop out of top 10 in scoring overall, but is still leading the way for his team. Lexa is the league penalty minutes leader with 14, but only had 2 PIMs this week, so not a bad adjustment. Canary, still first in the league in hits, but does drop out of the top 10 in goals and in outright scoring. They need him to wake up a little bit more. And then worth noting as well, Easy Sniper, of course, you mentioned him, being tied for first in goals amongst defensemen, but does drop out of the top 5 for D scoring. So somebody else that they're going to be looking to have take a bit of a step up. But they are getting some solid goaltending, at least from their starter. No disrespect to the backup there. It's going to be interesting. Again, Goons have had just a tumultuous history throughout the Elite and Pro divisions. Next up, we have a team that was off to a very hot start last week. It is the Blackjacks. They fall 3 spots down to number 9. Now, it is worth noting that, you know, they are getting offense. They have the most shots on goal in the league thus far. But when you get a look at the numbers, Kermit, of course, their leading scorer, has dropped from first in scoring with 17 points. He is now second with the 29, and he was first in goals with 10, but is now only in third with 16. So his pace definitely slowed down. You have Psycho Skills, who drops from the top 5 in outright scoring, but is still tied for first in assists with 19. He is also solid defensively, league leader in interceptions, and is still at first place in D scoring. So Psycho Skills still having a strong year. The guy who you got to kind of look at here is Timothy. Falls out of the top 10 in goals scored and in outright scoring. That is a big factor for the drop. And of course, Villain as well. The defenseman turned center, still solid defensively, still provides a lot, but the point scoring hasn't been there. So if he's not going to provide that offense, Timothy and Kermit cannot afford to slow down. Next up, well, let's address the elephant in the room here when it comes to Unwanted. At the time that I am recording this, a league admin decision is still being made. In defense of Kenu here, a reminder, it is not a one-person decision in whatever happens with Unwanted. Again, sportsgamer.gg will have all the most up-to-date information on that, but at the time of recording, a decision has not yet been made. So we will see what happens with Unwanted moving forward. In 11th, you have Mythics, who have dropped 1 spot. Only real notable thing for them so far is that they have the worst face-off percentage in the league at 41.15%. If they can't turn that around, it's going to be very, very difficult to be a playoff team. Roots Gaming hold in 12th. Key player for them this week has to be Sokolo, their leading scorer, who went from being tied, or is now tied, in scoring for 8th place with 23 points, and was tied for 2nd in goals with 5. He is now tied for 8th in goals with 5. Excuse me. It's a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, and I know. But it's worth it because, again, he was tied for 8th place in goals with 5. He now has 17 and is in 2nd place. A 12-goal week for Sokolo. Big part of the reason as to why Roots were able to hold this position. They still have some things to figure out. You know, Yanta's sub 80 save percentage, indicative of his play and the defensive play. They need to do a bit better, but they are in that conversation for maybe being able to make it into the playoffs, or at the very least, avoiding one of these bottom 4 positions. Which brings us to Vesapampa first, up 2 spots, up to 13th in the league. So a bit of a rebound for them. Good news, they have the fewest penalty minutes in the league. So, I mean, they're not kind of, shooting themselves in the foot throughout the season. Key player for them right now, it has to be the goaltending with, if I'm not mistaken, Kilzork. If I'm not mistaken, 5th in save percentage right now on an 850, only 2 games played, but a couple of big games there. I'm intrigued to see what their goaltending situation looks like and if they can start to find just a little bit more offense. Again, very talented team, very difficult team to surpass in the standings. They have kind of settled down into like a gatekeeper role as opposed to, being a consistent playoff threat, dare I say. This could be the season, though, where, hey, they turn back into that playoff threat. It is still very early on. Of course, down in 14th, we have Tiki Talk, who technically hold their position. They did start their season for this week. They do, though, have the highest goals against per game average at a 3.83. That is going to need to come down. But despite that, their star player this week is goaltender Bisa, who is second in save percentage with technically a 902 or a 90.2, whatever you prefer. Just 2 games played. Tale of 2 performances in terms of the goaltending thus far. Shout out to Party Time, by the way, 15 points in 6 games, doing very well. Still early in the Tiki Talk season, and of course, they got into the Elite Division kind of at the last minute, so it's been weird for them, but just a basic look at their initial start. Then you have Renascore, up by 1 into 15th position. They do maintain the lowest goals for per game at a 1.6, up from a 1.0, and they do have the league's, or they did have the league's worst goals against per game average, but obviously now they have dropped that number below Tiki Talk. However, for them, yet to score a power play goal. That is going to have to change as well. And then in last, at the moment, with just 2 regulation wins in 12 games, shockingly, it's Hamo, down another 3 spots in the standings. Yes, they have played some top teams, but they are nearly at the halfway point of their season. They've yet to score a power play goal. Shocking start for them. I don't put it past them to be able to recover. But given some of the other teams that have a lot less elite experience, like Renascore and Tiki Talk, I'm going to be very intrigued to see if Hamo can turn it around. But that is your look at the Elite Division. Again, we do have a long way to go, but I want to remind you all that we do have our live final coming up in February at Assembly for the top 2 teams that make it to the championship round here in the Elite Division. If you are a ECL player license holder, you can still inquire about getting your free tickets. And of course, if you just happen to be in the Helsinki area, well, hey, this February, check us out again at Assembly on the big stage as we will crown a new champion for our Winter 25 season. Moving on, let's talk about the second tier of the ECL ladder. It is our Pro Division, and we'll kick things off in Group Number 1. Maintaining their top spot through Week 2, it is Zenigame, and really the interesting thing here is their defensive structure. MCH, tied for first in assists in the league with 17, is also tied for second in defensive scoring. His defense partner, Johannes, is tied with him, both of them on 19 points. Johannes was 5th overall in scoring and first amongst defenders last week, as well was first in defensive goals. So they have been doing very, very well through the opening 2 weeks. And in goal, looking very, very strong, as well as UBXor is first in the league in save percentage with a 907, moving up from second place last week. What I find to be impressive about this is you had both Arakos, Paukos, and Amosi falling out of the top 10 in scoring, yet they maintained their top spot. So, again, shout out to the love package, Rakos, Paukos. Tremendous. But again, great start to the season for Zenigame. In second place, moving up 2 spots to claim that spot, is Blackbirds. Couple of interesting players for them here in the early stages of this season. Almio at the top, their leading scorer, is top 8 in scoring with 29 points. Does drop out of the top 10 in goals, But again, they still moved up in the standings, so it worked out okay. You also have Sopoli, who was tied for the league lead in assists with 17. And another aspect to them doing well, their goaltender Yerrick does drop out of the top 5 in save percentage, but as I talked about, don't be surprised to see them bounce back once we put the games played restriction in place when considering the top goaltenders. So very strong week 2 for Blackbirds to move up technically in the first place, but again, on points per game, it is second place. In third, dropping 1 spot to that position, Gotham Knights. They are still running off the back of a perfect penalty kill, but it's another similar story in terms of goaltending here, as Kusan technically drops out of the top 5 in save percentage after being number 1 last week, but it is still a very respectable 85%. Offensively, not doing too bad either, but again, it is a team with elite experience that are going to be hoping to finish at the top of their group, or at the very least, obviously, they want to make it back to elite. In fourth place, Atuksit, dropping 1 spot from third down to fourth. The good news is they still have the lowest goals against per game in the group at a 1.83, and they are tied for the top power play percentage in the group at 40%. In terms of some of their key players, and of course we saw them on broadcast this past Tuesday, you have Miguli, still top 8 in scoring, does drop down from 5, but moves up. He was 5th in goals at the end of week 1. He is now tied for 1st in goals in the Pro Division with 14. You have a little bit of another approach too. You have the scoring touch. You have the physicality as well. Persuiti, tied for the most hits in Pro. Couple of players to keep an eye out on, though. Machine Gun Kale drops out of the top 10 in scoring after being tied for 5th, but still impressive numbers. Just shows what the heights are in the Pro Division. And on defense, Yukis drops out of the top 5 in D scoring after being tied for 3rd. So you can look at those 2 players and say, like, okay, a 1-point slide makes sense, but Atuksit still very much in a good spot moving forward. In 5th place, moving up 2 spots to secure that position, it's the Old Timers, now no longer with the most penalty minutes in the group, but a couple of key players for them. Yapi Koita, interesting week, was 1st in goals after week 1 with 13, still on 13 at the end of week 2, and is now tied for 4th. So interesting that they were able to move up 2 spots when their top goal scorer did not find the back of the net. No longer top 10 in scoring, was tied for 2nd, but again, impressive that they were able to move up. Verpi as well, tied for 1st in assists, no longer top 10 in scoring, was in 1st place. Tisolino, still 1st in the league, though, in shutouts, but they didn't have any shutouts this week, but on 4 for the season. And Larig dropped out of the top 10 in goals. The fact that they were able to move up 2 spots is incredibly impressive when you consider some of those numbers, but hey, it is what it is. 7 regulation wins will certainly do it. So interesting start to the season for the Old Timers. In 6th, we have D-Lock moving up 3 points. They are tied for the top power play percentage in the league, of course, at 40%. And interesting enough for them, moving up despite a key player from week 1 struggling a bit, as Puntela was top 10 in goals as well, much like Larig on the Old Timers, yet they still moved up a couple of positions. And that's just a very good sign that your team is well-rounded and not dependent on one player in particular. In 7th, falling 2 spots, it is Nova, as key player for them has to be at this point, unsurprisingly, I'd say for most, it's got to be King of Apes, 5th in D scoring with 17 points. They still have some things to work on. We saw them on broadcast as well in this week. Definitely some talent that they're just trying to find the right pieces and how to put that all together. But Nova looking like they very much could be on pace for a playoff spot like they currently are. And then in 8th, it is Devils, dropping back 2 spots from number 6. Good news for them, they no longer have the worst face-off percentage, so that's obviously a good sign. 2 key players for them, though, as we take a look at, if I'm not mistaken, Curiad as their top forward, who is now tied for 4th in goals with 13. And then Bogomir, tied for 10th in goals with 12, is also, though, tied for the most penalty minutes. So, if they can find that discipline, continue to get that face-off percentage up, and find, continued point production like this, could very much see them on pace to make the playoffs as well. But, of course, there is going to be competition from the teams just on the outside looking in. At number 9, we have Serpents, who have moved up 6 spots from number 15 to number 9. Now, they have yet to score a power play goal, but the good news here is that they are no longer tied for the worst goals against per game average. So an improvement for them, and they move up quite a bit because of it. You have Exa up next, dropping 1 spot down into number 10, but they do have the highest goals for per game in Group 1 at a 3.38, but they also have the most penalty minutes in the group, and that is clearly costing them at this stage. In terms of key players, though, Adri leading the way, first in scoring in the league with 42 points, and Vinci behind him, second in scoring with 41, and is also top 4 in goals with 13. So for them, clearly, try to find that discipline, keep that scoring pace up, and good things could happen. And then, of course, final team in this section, the kind of safety section of group number 1. It is Kumanauta Klubale, as, one of these days I'll get closer, maybe. Top penalty kill, or at least a perfect penalty kill on the season thus far, as well as the fewest PIMs in group 1. So things are going really well for them from a disciplinary standpoint. Their key player, here we go with this one, currently second in scoring, Hopea Kupara. I went through that one way too slowly, but that's fine. Hopea Kupara. There we go. Tied for 10th in goals with 12. So a nice little bit of a wake up there as they moved up 3 spots into 11th and technically into one of those safety spots. Down 2 positions to number 12. It is SSK Esports. They do have the worst penalty kill in Group 1 at 55%. They no longer have the top face-off percentage either. But in terms of bright spots, they do still have Yoyep leading the way here, tied for first in goals in the league with 14. Rubitus tied for 10th in goals with 12, so you can see the separation isn't all that drastic, but Rubitus was 5th at the end of week 1. So face-off percentage dropping, penalty kill struggling as a result. You're not getting as many scoring opportunities. Pretty clear what SSK Esports needs to work on in the 3rd week of action. Next up, it is Nordic Stars, and see, this is the difference. In 5th place, but on points percentage, they are in one of those potential relegation battle spots. They have the worst face-off percentage in Group 1 at a 44.89%. They are still the most physical team in the group. They were top last week as well. But in terms of the key players to look at, because it's not all bad for them, their leading scorer, Masen Toitunu, is tied for 8th in scoring with 29 points, but they were 4th at the end of week 1. Yezbaru is tied for 4th in goals with 13, but they were in 3rd place outright and are no longer top 10 in scoring. Good news, though, Katanarski, with that elite experience, has woken up and now leads all defensemen in goals with 6. So some positives for Nordic Stars, but definitely some things they need to work on heading into week number 3. Speaking of things to work on, Deadly Phantoms. I don't know what's going on with these boys, but they drop another spot down into 14th. They have yet to score a power play goal. But what's so weird to me, they have the top face-off percentage in the group at 56.41%. So very, very weird start to the Deadly Phantoms season. And again, they're almost at the halfway point. Week 3 is going to be crucial for them to turn things around. And then we get to the bottom 2 teams, although, hey, there you go, a closer look at the Deadly Phantoms and at least the logo. We have Vizio moving up 1 spot to 15th. They no longer have the worst goals for per game in the league, but they do now have the worst goals against average in the group, I should say, at a 4.08. So the offense figuring things out, the defense is getting worse. interesting spot for them to be in is the only way I can think to phrase it, because it sounds nice. It's just been a really, really rough start for them. And then, of course, at the bottom, Mites, without a regulation win in 10 games. They have the worst goals for per game in the group at a 2.2. Obviously, if you're not scoring goals and can't find consistent offense, you're going to struggle. So that is the look in group number 1. Some interesting stories. And in terms of group number 2, we start off at the top with the team that maintains first position. It is No Street Sports, with the best goals for per game in the group at a 4.7, up from the league leading that they had last week at a 4.5. However, they do have the worst penalty kill in Group 2 at 50%, as I just slammed my finger on my desk. It hurts a lot, but I'm going to power through. They are the most physical team as well in Group 2 with 247 hits. In terms of their key players, let's take a look here at some of these numbers. Toivon, if I'm not mistaken, now tied for third in scoring with 38 points. A massive week for them. Hisa as well. Tied for 10th in goals with 12, but is no longer top 10 in outright scoring. Nwari Casanova is now tied for 10th in goals with 12, so another player stepping up in week 2. Otzes on defense, 4th in defensive scoring with 18 points. Technically dropping down, though, from second place after week 1, only 5 points this week. And then Snasigi in goal, 5th in save percentage at an 863, down from third place with an 882 last week, but still obviously an incredibly strong number. And again, another team that has, one player that was key for them in week 1 kind of dropping off a little bit in terms of the pace. And, well, as a result, you would think, hey, maybe things are a little bit rough, but hey, they are still doing very, very well for themselves. In second place in Group 2, up 2 spots from 4th, it is Björklöven Esport. Let's talk about their 2 key players to really focus on here. At the top, it is their leading scorer in Alpha Borea, tied now for 7th, or outright, in 7th, in scoring with 31 points, but is tied for first in assists with 17. Another key player to look at, Vilpiona, tied for the most penalty minutes in the league right now with 12. So another team where, hey, if you can figure out the discipline, stay out of the box, keep the scoring going from a key player or two, good things can happen. HC Lugano Esports, hello, up technically 13 positions because they had not started their season at the end of week 1. This was them opening off the season, and they're up to third place on points pace, fresh off of a perfect penalty kill as well. So HC Lugano Esports showing up in a big way in week number 2. In 4th place, Poggers up 8 spots from 12th to 4th, shrugging off a rough start off the back of now having the best power play percentage in the group at 40%. And in terms of their key players, you have Migo Buna, who is tied for 3rd in scoring with 38 points. Yakari is now 5th in scoring with 35 points and tied for top 4 in goals with 13. So a big week for those 2. And then on defense, Lauren Javi is now 1st in defensive scoring with 22 points. So Poggers really shrugging off that rough start. That is more of what I at least expected to see out of them heading in to the season. You have the Hervlev Eagles after another strong week 2, up 4 spots from 9 to 5. Key player for them has to be in goal with Eubens, who holds in 3rd position in save percentage with an 882, but again, is not their starter. Provocacia has that role, but it just goes to show goaltending for them is very stellar. I'm intrigued to see if Eubens gets more time. If not, we will not be seeing them in the top 5 for save percentages in Pro next week, as we already talked about. At number 6, down 3 spots from 3rd place, it is Aspyre. A couple of key players for them. Tihizu, 6th in scoring with 33 points and their leading scorer. And Yepux, who is top 8 in scoring with 29 points and tied for the league lead in goals with 14. Now, I talked about the whole social club aspect a little bit earlier on. Because of that, let's take a look at this clip that they entered.
Now with the puck behind the net, moving back and forth, trying to find an option out in front. Here's a shot blocked by Cash, another save by Cash. And now a poke check down low, another save by Cash. Oh my God, now Peke, a wide open Tahitsu into the open net. And he has just secured an amazing comeback victory. That is pretty much going to do it with just 6 seconds on the clock.
Back into the breakdown here in 7th place in Group 2, up 1 spot from week number 1. It is Golden Sticks. Now, interesting that they've been able to move up because they do have the worst goals for per game in the group with a 1.17, but they have the best goals against per game in Group 2 at a 1.17. They are also the only team in the group yet to score a power play goal, but they have the top face-off percentage in the group at 58%. I don't know what to make of the Golden Sticks and their start to the season through 6 games. Worth noting, their key player is their goaltender, Strong, who has an 87.04 save percentage, good for 4th in the Pro Division. So again, very interesting start for Golden Sticks through 2 weeks. And then in 8th, Isman Valinta down 3 spots from number 5 into 8th, as mentioned. Again, key players for them. We look at Ricardo, if I'm not mistaken. It might be Ricard if you have 055, but again, tough to tell. I'm going with Ricardo for this one. Top 10 in goals with 12. However, the drop-off down 3 spots, maybe not the most surprising. Posu drops off of the top 10 in goal scoring entirely, while Luki drops out of the top 5 in defensive scoring. And you can tell here they haven't exactly had a steady lineup with 8 skaters getting ice time so far this season. That's going to cause some issues when you're working in that many depth players. Team number 9, let's talk about Red Bull Munich Esports, down 3 spots from last week. They do still have a perfect penalty kill, but the downside is they're having to use that penalty kill quite a bit because as we get a look here at their scoring, it is Domi that we're paying attention to as he is tied for the most penalty minutes in Pro with 12. So key for them moving forward, stay out of the box. The rest of things for the teams, not looking too bad. Stay out of the box, get that pressure off of the goaltender a little bit more if you can. In 10th, again, going with Roofstick, let me know. Up 3 spots, though, from a rough start to the season in week 1, from 13th now in 10th. And really, it's off the back of some physicality as Naiku is tied for the pro lead in hits at this point of the season. I was looking at the interceptions for some reason with 60. And again, the interceptions, shout out to 81. For Sage there, that just caught my attention. That's a very, very solid number. So in theory, a solid physical defensive team. Just need to kind of shrug off that slow start to the season. Speaking of slow starts, Savalanche, a huge loser in week 2. There's no other way to put it. They dropped 9 spots from 2nd all the way down to 11th, despite taking the fewest amount of penalties in the league. So just a really, really rough week for them. You have the Finnish Roosters in 12th, down 1 spot. Key player for them, though, I knew this guy more as a forward in the Elite Division, but it is their goaltender, at least for 4 games so far. Keskitalo has been stellar in goal and is 2nd in the league in save percentage right now with that 883. So we'll see, of course, what the goaltending situation looks like. That is far from a unique situation for them when it comes to having one goalie significantly outperforming the other despite a game's difference. In 13th, Cheeky Grinders up 1 spot this week. They are no longer tied for the worst goals against average. So, hey, positives there. The Nuremberg Ice Tigers, currently in 14th. They dropped 7 points, or 7 spots, down to 14th. No longer with the league's top power play percentage, and they have taken the most penalties in Group 2. that is clear cut. Like, that's the biggest issue, is got to stay out of the box. In the drop zones, we have Afterlife in 15th, down 5 spots from number 10, and Refuse to Lose dropped from 15th to dead last in 16th, with the highest goals against average per game in the group at a 5.25. The worst face-off percentage in the group at a 4.2.81. In terms of the key players for them, though, it's interesting because you have Sony, who has stepped up, is now tied for 8th in scoring with 29 points. But then you have Logi, who has also taken a step up, tied for 4th in goals with 13. 5 goals this week, had 8, which was good enough to be tied for 8th place at the end of week 1. So they have some players who are performing well, but again, another team, a lot of players being used. That's going to cause some issues in terms of the goaltending, the defensive structures, and the familiarity. So still early days. Again, nobody's over that halfway point of the season in the pro division, but certainly some teams that you can say, things are going well. For others, not so much. But even the teams that have things going well for them, as we talked about, there are aspects that they need to work on, and that's maybe not the most surprising for the early stages of the season. Moving on to our third tier, it is the Light division. Let's kick things off in group number 1. Now, this is a group where it's like, okay, things are a little bit interesting, but technically, Caldecott Esports are in first on the point per game percentage, up 10 spots from 11th. They are tied for the best goals against average per game, with just 2 goals allowed in their 2 games, yet to score a power play goal because they've only played 2 games, and have the fewest PIMs because they've only played 2 games. So we won't overhype them yet, as they got their season started off late, clearly, but still worth keeping an eye on them in the early stages. They knocked Mudu Hockey off of that top spot. They're now down into second. They do have the highest goals for per game in the group at a 4.25. They also have the most hits with 280. The key players for them, we have to shout out Mr. Xbox, taking the lead in scoring on the team from unranked out of the top 10 in terms of scoring, now to being tied for 8th place with 34 points. And then Mateus Gamer moving up to being top 10 in scoring with 33 points and tied for top 4 in goals with 17. They were unranked in both of those categories, or at least outside of the top 10 last week as well. So Mudo technically dropping down, but I think most would agree are the team on paper that are off to the hottest start thus far, unless Caldecott just continues a crazy, crazy start. In third place, holding on to third place, it is Pharmaloget, as a key player for them, Disc Trasan, if I am not mistaken there, their leading scorer, who is tied for 7th in goals with 16 after being outside of the top 10 in week number 1. In fourth, Puck Over Glass. Now, they have yet to score a power play goal, but that does not stop them from holding on to 4th place for the 2nd week in a row. And despite that lack of a power play goal, they do have the best face-off percentage in Group 1. Key player that I'm looking at for them is Kanuzan, who does drop in D scoring from 3rd place to outside of the top 5. So, going to be very intrigued to see if they can kind of continue to find that form. Obviously, they have some pretty strong numbers here, and it's still early days. Defensively, the goaltending needs to get a little bit better if they're really going to put forward with a title challenge this season. In 5th place, up 4 spots from number 9, you have the German Ice Gladiators, so a big week 2 for them. And in 6th, up 1 spot, actually maybe even 2, I might have a typo here, but HC Videlma. Interesting here, Yuhan was top 3 in scoring in week 1, now outside of the top 10 at 27 points in 10 games. Still a very impressive number. Certainly not someone that we're overly worried about in terms of their performance. So for Videlma, they do gain a spot, and yeah, very much look like they could be on their way to a playoff position. Down in 7th, though, is Ace Squad. They dropped 5 points from 2nd place. Big reason for that is the goals against per game, the worst in the group at a 4.4, and the worst face-off percentage in the group at 44%. This was not a drop-off I was expecting, but Deline drops out of the top 10 in terms of scoring and goals despite having 30 points in 10 games and 19 goals. It just shows what the standard is right now. Trejo as well drops out of the top 10 in scoring. They were tied for third after week 1. So it's tough to say you need those two to bounce back because the numbers are very, very strong. I'm intrigued to see kind of what they managed to do in week number 3 because, yeah, it's just very interesting to watch a team start off that hot and fall 5 spots despite the numbers still looking very solid. And in 8th, we have DEG Esports up 4 spots from 12th now to 8th after starting their season this week. They are tied for the best goals against per game average with 2, and they have the best power play in the group at 50%. Number 9, you have the Black Sharks dropping down 1 spot this week. Not nearly as bad as Team Infernus, who drops down 5 spots to number 10. The Carolus Icemen also dropping down 5 spots, but it's interesting. They have a player to really pay attention to here on the defensive side of things. It is Ekison, who is tied for first in defensive goals with 6. They also have the most shots by a defender with 50. So intrigued to see if they can kind of get things back on the right track. And then at the bottom, SSK Academy dropping 2 spots down to number 12 with the worst goals for per game number in the group at a 1.91 and the most penalties taken. So obviously, if they are going to bounce back, discipline is another pretty big aspect. Moving on to group number 2, and at the top, it is HC Boostertal Esports moving up 1 spot to claim that top spot. Tied for the best goals against average in the group at just 1.5 allowed, and their key player has to be their goaltender as a result. Ruzakuza, who was third in save percentage last week, is now second with an 896. So a very strong start in goal for Pustertal Esports. In second place, we have Ruti up 1 spot now in second. Couple of key players for them, including a big one here in Antico, who was not top 10 last week in goals, but is now tied for first with 18. So how about that? Mixe as well is tied for first in assists in the league, I should say, with 20. You do have Temeti as well in goal, whose save percentage drops a little bit in terms of not being like one of the highest numbers technically, but in terms of an outright starter, is one of the best and will be getting that accolade if this pace continues heading into week number 3. So a good week for them as they continue to kind of stabilize and not only stabilize, but improve. In third place, Tokuku down 2 spots into third, again as mentioned. They are tied for the best goals against average in the group at a 1.5. They also have a perfect penalty kill with the fewest penalties taken, despite the most hits in the group. So pretty impressive numbers there. Their 2 key players, Yusa Solo, tremendous name, tied for 4th in scoring now on 38 points, despite not being in the top 10 last week. And then in goal, Bobby Python, no longer first in save percentage for the same reasons that we mentioned with Temeti, but is still tied for the league lead in shutouts with 3. So still players very much to keep an eye on. Project X up 1 spot into 4th position. They have the top power play percentage in the group at 38.1%. In terms of their key players, it was about having players step up for them as well, as Yessi is now tied for top 10 in scoring with 33 points, was outside of the top 10 previously, and Tespo is tied for first in goals with 18, was previously unranked. And then in goal, Sisu is now first in save percentage at the 920 save percentage, but again, just the 2 games played. Was second in save percentage last week, did not play this week. Again, they have iced 3 goalies so far. That's someone, again, if they don't get more games, we won't be talking about them as much next week, but did have a very strong start to the season. At number 5, Vitos Vitia up 2 spots off the back of the best goals for per game pace in the group at a 4.67. But again, just 6 games played, so a lot could change there. For SCB, Esports up 2 spots to number 6. And here's maybe the name of the week. Borosiantor, 3rd in save percentage at an 89.29. Again, though, just the 2 games, clearly not the starter. And honestly, Killer Ashram at an 82.58. Tremendous numbers there. It looks like either way, they're good to go. But looks like Killer will be more likely to get the accolades next week, again, as we install that limit. At number 7, old Coup de Grace, down 1 spot this week. Worst penalty kill in the group at 53.85. That needs to change. But what's interesting, top face-off percentage at 58.47. So again, 53.85 on the PK, 58 on the face-offs. You can see the positives and the negatives. In terms of their key players, we have Iron Fist, who is still tied for, or at least was when I looked, was up there for defensive goals. I believe we've had some late games implemented here, so I'll hold off on the initial judgment. But worth noting as well that Matthews started to drop off as well up until some of these games were implemented late. I was going to say 5th in goals with 12, now up to 20. So clearly, for Coup de Grace, not that bad. Still in 7th, though, so keep an eye out on them. And in 8th place, down 4 spots this week, Aspyre Lauf Gaming. So we'll see if they can bounce back in week number 3. In 9th, holding at that spot is Kokai Esports. Lee Haponi, their key player, drops in defensive scoring a bit. Was previously tied for 4th in D scoring with 12 points. Picks up just 1 point this week. So kind of a sign that the offense couldn't really get going like they did in week number 1. You have Boomers holding in 10th position with the worst goals against average in Group 2 with a 5.67. And they're another team that are kind of living and dying by the physicality, especially on the defensive side of things, as Karki has the most hits amongst defenders in the league, while Camel Guy on the other side, most penalty minutes amongst defenders. So clearly needing to stay out of the box if they can. And again, another team that has used a few more options on the ice. And of course, the goaltending, not quite where they'd want it to be. We'll leave it at that. Number 11 is Woodhands, up 2 spots from 13th. However, they are the only team in Group 2 without a power play goal. The Iserlohn Roosters esports squad holds at number 12 with the worst face-off percentage in the group at 41%. And then Taisto, down 2 spots into the basement at number 13 with the worst goals for per game mark in the group at 1.6 and the most penalties taken. Moving on, let's talk about group number 3. As you can see at the top, it is Underrated, who move up 1 spot to secure that primary pole position. They are tied for first in goals for per game at 4.5. They also have the fewest penalty minutes taken in the group. In terms of their key players, shout out to Psycho, who really steps up after being unranked in both, is now top 6 in scoring and top 9 in goals. Son as well, top 10 in scoring, is also tied for first in hits. So a big step up for those two. In goal, Andre drops a little bit in save percentage, was 5th previously, but again, still a strong number and very much could be in the running once we constrict those rankings. We have Hopfen Smoothie HC at number 2, moving up 1 spot. They are the other team tied in first with a 4.5 goals for per game average. They also have a perfect penalty kill, so a decent start for them, but just 4 games played. The Dara Stars down 2 spots into 3rd. They're also showcasing a picture-perfect penalty kill. For them, got to shout out Senatory. Drops in scoring, was tied for 3rd with 21 points. Now just on 28 with 19 goals. So clearly, trying to find that consistency as the weeks go on throughout the season. Another fun team for me in this particular group. It is Kurtomia Vastan holding in 4th place in the group. In terms of their key players, Playmakerly, we have to shout out, is now tied for 4th in scoring with 38 points. They were previously unranked. Kasperi as well, tied for 10th in scoring, previously unranked. And then Datsuki is tied for 1st in assists with 20, is 2nd in D scoring, up from being tied for 4th at the end of week 1, and is 1st in blocks. In goal, Masamon, 8 games played so far, is 4th in save percentage with an 8.87. So things are looking pretty good for Kurtomia Vastan. We'll see if that continues, as again, they hold 4th place in Group 3. In 5th, we have Macho HC also holding their position off the back of the top power play in the group at 41.18% and the top face-off percentage in the group at nearly 57%. Our 3rd straight hold, 6th place, Saucer Hockey. Key player for them in goal, Rontasaki, who is 5th in save percentage with an 8.84, but again, just 2 games played as the backup. But hey, it's early. You've earned that shout out, but you don't get more games moving forward. We are going to start focusing on the starters like Mazupizu at a nice 83% on the season thus far. Sune Iko Esport at number 7, up 4 spots from number 11, despite having the worst penalty kill in the group at 60%. So hey, there you go. You know what you have to work on heading into week number 3. And then in 8th, up 4 spots from 12th, Sete Licurho, with a very interesting player, for me at least, to pay attention to, and that is someone with plenty of elite experience. We're talking about Antti, who is now tied for 4th in goals in the league with 17 after being on the outside of top 10 in week number 1. So definitely a player to keep an eye out on. Number 9, we have the Senayoki Noms moving moving down 2 spots to number 9. Obviously looking at Sete Licurho previously, but yeah, Senayoki Noms down 2 spots this week. Galimus Hockey Krefeld also holding their spot this week. A lot of holds in this particular group. They are tied for the worst goals against average in the group at a 4.5. Obvious what they need to work on. The Moscow Capitals down 3 spots to number 11 despite a perfect penalty kill. Is worth shouting out, though, Akimka, who is tied for 1st in defensive goals with 6, and is also, of course, tied for the team lead in points outright. And then at the bottom, down 3 spots to number 12, it is Game Over Esports. It's not going to be pretty here, boys. With the worst goals for per game in the group at a 2.0, tied for the most goals against per game in the group at a 4.5. They are the only team in the group without a power play goal. They have taken the most penalty minutes in the group. They have the worst face-off percentage in the group, and maybe tied with the most penalty minutes, they have the most hits in the group. So incredibly physical, not able to stay out of the box, not able to score goals, potentially living up to their namesake unless they can have a big week number 3. And last but not least for the light division, it is group number 4. At the top of the board, we currently have the SSK Prospect Squad up 4 spots to claim the top spot off the back of the lowest goals against average per the group in the group with a 1.78. Key players for them. Need to shout out Sveti, yet again staying 1st in league scoring with 49 points. Had 30 at the end of week 1, so a big week there. And is also tied for 1st in hits. Victor Hall, still 1st in defensive scoring with 27 points, an 11-point week, and is 1st in block shots. Rame, still 3rd in defense, or now 3rd in defensive scoring, up from 4th last week. The Raws tied for the league lead in shutouts, in goal with 3 and just 8 games played. And all of this despite the fact that someone like E. Bjorken dropped off in terms of scoring and goals out of the top 3 in scoring and was 2nd in goals. Still strong numbers, though, but the rest of the team around him continuing to step up. SSK Prospects looking like a strong contender this season. In second place, up 9 positions, Kika Kirya with their key player for this week, no doubt being Yimpa, who is now tied for first in goals with 18 after being outside the top 10 last week. So a big week for both SSK prospects and Kika Kirya. The Six Sticks Misfits find themselves up 4 spots into number 3, while Vita down 3 spots from number 1 in the group. They are at 4, thanks to what I would say the most penalty minutes in the group. Just not able to stay out of the box because they did have a player of their own step up in a big-time way. Maybe the best name in all of the ECL, Nicky Ticketon, who is now tied for 8th in scoring and tied for 4th in goals after being unranked in both categories. So Vita have a couple of things to work on in regards to discipline. In 5th position, Pata Halala, down 1 spot from 4th. So, again, only 4 games played. We'll see what they do once the action picks back up for them. Technical Disaster in 6th, down 4 spots. They do still maintain a perfect penalty kill. And in terms of their key players, it was a big week for Capo, who moved up from unranked to being tied for 7th in goals with 16. And then Rister as well is tied for 1st in assists with 20. So bit of a rough week for them. We'll see kind of what happens, especially once a team like Pata Halala and Six Sticks Misfits end up being in double-digit games played. The VBO Stars down 1 spot to number 7, despite the best goals for per game in the group at over a 4.0. They also have the most hits in the group. Key players for them, we are looking at Bror, who of course has elite experience, is now tied for 2nd in scoring with 43, up from being tied for 3rd. Does drop in goals, though. Was previously 1st, but obviously 29 and 14 games is still absolutely stellar. And then August is tied for 6th in scoring with 37 points, previously out of the top 10. Bastion as well, tied for 10th in scoring, was previously unranked as well. So the VBO Stars, their offense is looking good. They just got to figure out things on the defensive side of things, but not the worst start to the season for them. Team number 8, including me, down 5 spots to number 8. Their key player for week 2, somebody else who stepped up into the top 10, Lataseva, now tied for 2nd in scoring with 43 points. So big time performance this week. Team number 9, Hockey Holics, down 1 spot, despite having the top power play in the group at 50%. Calipo HC down 1 spot to number 10. Hurricanes down 1 spot to number 11, still yet to score a power play goal. At 12, the Trojans hold their spot despite the worst penalty kill in the group at 46% and the worst face-off percentage in the group at 44%. And Bellissimo hold at number 13 with the lowest goals for per game in the group at a 1.63, the highest goals against per game at a 4.88. They have yet to score a power play goal, but they have the top face-off percentage in the league at a 54.55. Sometimes the numbers just don't make a ton of sense, or, teams aren't able to fully capitalize on their success in one area of the gameplay and be able to make that, translate to the rest of the gameplay. Moving on to tier number 4, it is our core division here in the ECL. Let's start off in group number 1. Moving up 1 spot into top position, Dynamo HC with the lowest goals against average in the group at a 1.86. The top face-off percentage in the group at 59%. The 2 key players for them this week, we have to shout out Harton, who is now 5th in scoring with 44 points and is top 6 in goals. And, speaking of goals, stopping them a lot has been Callum, who is now 3rd in save percentage with an 8.84. So keep an eye out on Callum as well. I have a feeling we'll be mentioning him quite a bit next week. In 2nd place, Hiljanen Pikkukaupunki, moving up 2 spots. Key players for them, Ota Hupio, with a big week now, top 6 in goals with 21. And Larde slips a little bit in save percentage, was 1st with a 920 after week 1, now at an 863. But again, still a very stellar number, and a goaltender we'll be mentioning throughout the season. In third place, Taskubilis down 2 spots. They do have the best penalty kill in the group at a 93.75%. Another team which, sees their starting goaltender slip up a little bit with Lunas, but still at an 84.81 save percentage. Another goalie we'll be mentioning all season long. You have the Prowlers moving up 1 spot into 4th place with the best goals for per game number in the group at a 4.25, and the best power play percentage in the group at nearly 31%. Their key player has to be Hanu, tied for 8th in scoring with 40 points and is tied for 3rd in goals with 23 on the season. That'll be a name to keep an eye out on as well as we head into week number 3. Team number 5, up 3 spots, the Cape Town Kings. Key to their success, fewest penalty minutes in the group. The Gilly Gang hold at number 6. On the flip side, they've taken the most penalty minutes in the group, but they also have the most hits as well, so maybe it's not surprising. The 2 key players for them, we have Vide, their leading goal scorer, stays 2nd in goals in the league with 27, had 18 at the end of week number 1, and Disartaya is 1st in defensive goal scoring with 29 points, was 1st last week as well with 23. So just 6 points this week, but not too bad at all for the Gilly Gang to maintain their position. In 7th, Kopibuti, down 3 spots, the worst penalty kill in the group at 58%, so it's quite obvious what they need to work on. And in team number 8, Philippi Palit, down 1 spot. Fewest hits in the group, so not a physical team. If you're not going to be a physical team, you got to find success in other ways, but currently would be in a playoff spot. Team number 9, holding in their position, we have Raiders HC. Scrubs holding in 10th position, the only team in the group without a power play goal. And then at the bottom, holding 11th place, still without a win through 10 games, it's Ingolstadt. The worst goals for per game in the group at a 1.3. The worst goals against per game in the group at a 5.3, and the worst face-off percentage in the group at 35%. You don't have to look too hard to see where they have been struggling. Moving on to group number 2, Maito Yuna holds as the top team in the group. The key players for them, Toimi Tatula, 4th in defensive scoring with 20 points in 10 games. And then in goal, Feki Nambo, I believe, 5th in save percentage with an 880 through 4 games. We'll see, of course, what that games played split happens to be throughout week number 3. In 2nd place, also holding their position, the Cost Wolves, the highest goals for per game in the group at 5.0. The 2 key players for them this week, Freeze Skillers, 1st in scoring now in the league with 52 points and 1st in goals with 34 in just 14 games. And of course, Marul there as well is tied for 2nd in scoring with 47 points and is 2nd in the league in assists with 33. So another big week for the Cost Wolves. This is looking like a pretty stacked group because Nameless also hold at 3rd. They have the lowest goals against average in the group with just 2. Key player for them yet again, it's old Jimmy No Hands, old Yimmy No Hands. Tied for 6th in goals with 21. Was 4th last week with 15. So only 6 goals this week, but still a very impressive performance there as the top 3 of the group all hold their positions. We have Salazura moving up 1 spot into 4th position, despite not scoring a power play goal yet this season. We'll see if that's able to change. Not having a chance even better. Number 5, down 1 spot. It is Armion Curry. Perfect penalty kill on the season with the fewest penalty minutes in the group and the highest face-off percentage in the group at 59%. So definitely a recipe for success. We'll see if they're able to move their way up in subsequent weeks. In 6th, we have Nordic Nosebleed up 2 spots this week, fresh off of the top power play in the group at 33%. And key player for them in goal, Jean Claus. It is Jean Claus, though. Just makes me think of Van Dam. Second in save percentage through 4 games played with an 893 save percentage. Again, we'll see what goaltender gets the majority of the starts based on availability or what the team just decides to do. In 7th place, down 1 spot this week, the Reckless Panthers, worst penalty kill in the group at 57%. They're going to have to work on that. They have also taken the most penalty minutes in the group as well. So very obvious path for what they need to work on heading into week 3. And then in 8th, HC Lisco, down 1 spot this week. Key player for them has to be Verti, who is 5th in defensive scoring with 19 points, was 4th last week with 15, so just a 4-point week there. The teams on the outside looking in, we have Yervan Lecky up 2 spots to number 9, despite, of course, not having a power play goal yet. They do have a perfect penalty kill and are, I believe, one of the more physical, actually the fewest hits in the league. A typo there. Yeah, fewest hits in the group with just 63. But as a result, hey, they're staying out of the box and have a perfect PK. At number 10, HC Ohiveto holding their spot despite having the worst goals against average in the group at a 5.3 and the worst face-off percentage in the group at 40% while being the most physical team in the league. So interesting start for their season. Obvious what they have to work on. In 11th, it is Wildcats Esports, moving up 1 spot despite still not having a regulation win and dropping 3 spots into last place here. It is Nürnberg Niedhog, worst goals for in the group at a 1.38. You gotta find ways to generate offense. It is as simple as that. Group number 3. We start off with the Silver Sword Griffins yet again, holding their position despite having the worst penalty kill in the group at 62.5%. But their key players still doing well. You have Latminks at the top, tied for 8th in scoring, technically down from 4th in week 1, is also top 10 in goals, but was 3rd at the end of week number 1. You also have Kriteris, who was 2nd in defensive scoring, or is 2nd in defensive scoring, was 5th, so you have that improvement there. And then Martin Silens drops a little bit, was 3rd in scoring, is now tied for 4th. So you can see some players, a little bit of momentum, losing it, gaining it. It does allow those Silver Sword to keep their position in 1st at the top of group number 3. Panic on Ice moves up 2 spots to number 2 in the group with the best goals for per game at a 5.5 and the fewest goals against. They also have the top power play percentage in the group at 42% and the top penalty kill in the group at 92%. Key players for them, somebody else with elite experience, the captain of the team. It is Pananen, who is tied for 2nd in league scoring with 47 points and tied for 3rd in goals with 23. You also have Moika, who is 4th in scoring with 46 points and leads the league in assists. Hell of a name. Oh my God, I'm so bad. Tied for 6th in goals with 21. And then in goal, top save percentage in the league. Granted, just 2 games, but Yambo is there with a 903. Again, we'll see what happens in week number 3. In 3rd place, up 2 positions, Pulp Odyssey, so a good week for them. Down 1 position, Tarun Gasalit. Despite having the best face-off percentage in the league at 54%, a couple of key players for them. Their captain, Poyarzinho, currently 7th in scoring with 42 points, is top 10 in goals as well. Yotaya Lebi is tied for 8th in scoring with 40 points, and Nitivirta is 3rd in defensive scoring and 1st in goals amongst defenders with 8, as well as leading the league in blocks. So they do drop a spot this week, but definitely some bright spots throughout the Tarun Gasalit lineup. In 5th place, down 3 positions, is Kella Goldcard, HC. Honestly, I mean, it's kind of obvious what to look at. Worst face-off percentage in the group at 43%. But key players for them, Levi Yopo, tied for 3rd in goals with 23, but was 1st with 19 at the end of week 1. So just 4 goals this week, and they drop out of the top 10 in scoring despite being 1st at the end of week 1. Clear-cut issue for them. And as well, Rome Urali Mies, I believe. A drop in production there, was tied for 1st in scoring. So with 31 points, only 7 points this week. If those top two can get going again, expect to see Kella Gold Card rise in the standings. But again, a lot of teams working on things as we progress. In sixth, we have HC Last Resort. They dropped 2 spots this week, but still, I mean, half their games they've won in regulation. It's not bad. You have in seventh the Back Check Boys, up 4 positions, with the fewest PIMs in the group and the fewest hits. Probably a correlation there. And then at number 8, down 2 spots, Mies Kassat, with the worst goals against average in the group at a 4.75. They do have the most hits, which is nice, including Kaitsu, who still leads the league in hits. On the outside looking in, Rodis down 2 spots in the 9th with the worst power play percentage in the league at 8.33%. The most PIMs taken in the league, with Puhastelia, I believe, having the most PIMs in the league. Yargani on defense, though, with the most interceptions. So there's bright spots, but got to stay out of the box. You have the Kurbads Warriors down 1 spot to number 10, and then also down 1 spot, the Brunker Bulldogs with the fewest goals for in the league at a 1.4 in the group, I should say. And then Kvarting as well needs better discipline. Most PIMs with 18 on that particular team. So you can see a lot of teams that if they can just clean up the discipline side of things, they're going to be looking better. As we move to group number 4, Tiki Taka holding at number 1 with the best face-off percentage in the group at 54%. They do have the fewest hits, but it's not like they're completely opposed to physical play. Key players for them, Nikors is their second in defensive goals with 7. You also have Ratamersu, who dips a little bit, was 5th in scoring. Nasu dips a little bit, was 6th in scoring. And Yus dips, was 3rd in defensive scoring. Despite those numbers being down, they maintain top position in Group 4. That is tremendous news for them. However, Rusty X waking up a little bit and hot on their tail, perhaps. Up 5 spots this week are the group's most physical team. In third, holding their position, the Carmadillos, the best power play in the group at 54.55%. In Stimpeli, tied for 8th in scoring with 40 points. So, again, certainly a player to keep an eye out on. And Ansku is not that much further behind. Team number 4, up 1 spot this week. It is Sopranos, with the best goals against average in the group at just a 1.6. However, they do have the worst power play in the group at an 8.33%. Fewest PIMs in the group, though. Worst face-off percentage in the group at 40%. On the positive side, you have Mirali, who is 3rd in defensive goals with 6. And Red Hawk in goal, 4th in save percentage, and is 1st in shutouts in the league with 3. So a lot of positives, a lot of negatives for Sopranos so far. But again, they are up into 4th place. In 5th, Skyfall drop 3 spots this week. They do have the most goals for per game at a 4.43, but they also have the most penalty minutes in the group. Key player for them this week has to be, tremendous name, Stu Rules, 6th in scoring with 43 points. So far, Stu, you're living up to that handle. In 6th place, Latunakat holds their position, while the Solution drop 3 points down to 7th. They are tied for 1st, though, with the best penalty kill in the group at 91.67%. In 8th place, EHC Ulti Esports up 1 spot to number 8, in spite of the worst penalty kill in the group at 61%. Got to work on that. Vita Academy at number 9, down 1 spot. They have the worst goals for per game in the group at a 158, while at 10, holding that position, is EV Duisburg, with the worst goals against average in the group at a 5.3. Dompa HC yet to begin their season, but they are going to begin, is the word here, for week number 3. And that brings us to at least an end there, looking at the core division. You can see similar stories, similar patterns throughout these tiers in terms of, okay, we're 2 weeks in. Now we know what certain teams need to work on, what players are, continuing to ride the hot hand of a hot start versus maybe cooling off a little bit, Week 3 is the very interesting one because we really start to get a better look at what the playoff picture might be, at what the top players might happen to be, especially in terms of scoring, the starting goaltenders. So intrigued to see what it ends up looking like here, even this far down the ladder. And moving on to our final league of this edition of the Wraparound, it is, of course, our entry-level tier, the Neo division, and we'll kick things off, of course, at the top. In group number 1, still led by Ice Raptors with the best goals against in the group at a 1.6, the perfect penalty kill as well. And of course, in goal, we shouted them out in week number 1. We have to do so as well this week. Their goaltender, Tubu, who is third in save percentage with a 917 through the 5 games, had a 920 last week and was first in the league. So only 5 games played for the Raptors thus far, but they are at the top. Nordic Knights move up 1 spot to take over second place, have yet to score a power play goal, but they have a perfect penalty kill on the season thus far. Brothers in Gaming, a big boost this week, up 7 spots to number 3 with the most goals for per game in the group with 6, led by Mesrine Yak, if I am not mistaken, who is tied for 6th in goals with 21 in 6 games. If you prefer Jack, let me know, of course. But Brothers in Gaming, big week for them. In 4th, Selacunta holding their position. Key player for them was Simpa, who does drop in scoring and interceptions. Was first in scoring amongst defenders in week 1 and had the most interceptions. No longer holding that particular title, but again, the team still able to hold their position at number 4. At number 5, also holding their position, Davy Mihet, the top power play in the group at 60%. Key player for them, Flameri, drops, but they're still able to hold their position despite that defensive, offensive contribution falling off a little bit. And then, of course, in 6th, you have Hawks HC, down 4 positions this week. Rough week for them. On the bright side, they do still have the top face-off percentage in the group at 58%. The Nordic Falcons hold their spot at number 7, also yet to score a power play goal, and they have the worst penalty kill in the group at 62.5%, while having the most hits. So obviously you're playing with a little bit of fire in terms of that physicality and not being able to stay out of the box. The Czechoslovakia Ravens drop 2 spots down to number 8. They have taken the most penalties in the group. Obviously, they need to find that discipline. The worn-out Wisemen hold at number 9, yet to score a power play goal, yet to have a PK, but they have only played 2 games, of course. And then the Ice Huskies down 2 spots to number 10, and I hate to do this to y'all, but I got to do it. The worst goals for in the group at a 1.71. The worst goals against average in the group at a 5.57. The worst face-off percentage in the group at 38%. On the bright side, they still have Begic, who has the most blocks in the league still. But Sizia at the top drops, was first in defensemen for goals with 5, but others have caught up to him. So rough start to the season for the first 2 weeks for the Ice Huskies. Moving on to group number 2, and moving up 1 spot to claim that top spot is Salase Uru. If I'm not mistaken, I guarantee I'm mistaken, but hey, I tried. The most goals for in the group at a 5.25, a perfect penalty kill, the most physical team in the group, and they are led by 2 key players. Nikesuki is up there, tied for 3rd in scoring, up from 5th last week, and down from 4th in goals to 6th, but still obviously strong numbers. And then Osku is tied for 1st in defensive goals with 6. So it's certainly a team to keep an eye out on as they claim the top spot. The Vitapoya Vikings down 1 spot into 2nd. They are tied for the lowest goals against average in the group with 3. Key players for them, Limas, who is tied for 9th in scoring, but down from 3rd last week, from 24 points now on 40. Was 3rd in goals with 26, or is 3rd in goals now with 26, was tied for 1st with 16. So, case in point, good week, still very productive, still scoring goals, but has some pretty tough competition around the league. And then Reti Sose, most interceptions in the league and 35 points as well. So, for Vitapoya, still looking pretty good. They have some competition in the group, though. You have in third place HC Left Academy, up 2 spots. Great discipline, fewest PIMs in the group, and they have the top face-off percentage at 58.72. The Hanover Indians esports squad up 3 spots this week. They are tied for the lowest goals against average in the group with 3, led by key player and goaltender Knut Flusen. Close enough. I just want to call him not losing because he hasn't been. First in the league in save percentage with a .952 over the 2 games that he played. Absolutely outstanding performance. At number 5, up 3 positions this week, it is Beastie Boys, yet to score a power play goal, but have a perfect penalty kill. Not bad. And at number 6, holding their position, Lassen Lampat, with the top power play percentage in the group at 50%. They have, however, taken the most penalties. They are going to have to, figure that out as they move on. You have Legion HC down 4 spots this week to number 7. Worst face-off percentage in the group at 36%. They got to figure that out. And then Karit at the bottom of the group, down 4 spots, with the lowest goals for per game in the group at 2.5 and the highest goals against average in the group at 5.5. A keen eye would know we did have 9 teams here. HC Inter Warriors will not compete this season. They are off of the standings board. They will not be the only one. In group number 3, top of the board, up 7 spots this week. After missing week number 1, it's Red Bull Munich Academy with the top goals for in the league at 7.7, the best goals against average at a 2.2. And we can talk about pretty much everybody on this team. You have Sauron, who is now second in scoring with 50 points in 10 games, man. 4th in goals with 25. Honer is tied for 3rd in scoring with 48 points and top 6 for goals with 21. Kimi's 10th in goals with 20. eBay CKO, something like that. Close enough. First in defensive scoring with 31 points. And then goaltender Windows is first in shutouts with 3. Red Bull Munich Academy missed week 1, made a statement in week number 2. Holding their position in second place, it is the Nordic Macabre. And in third, down 2 spots from number 1, the Vicksbury Puck Rats, led by Thunderfrosted as a goal scorer who is top 6 with 21 on the season, 32 points in 8 games. You have the second Nordic Knights squad down 1 spot to number 4, led by 2 players that did kind of drop off a little bit, and as a result, I think you could see it drop off like in general with the standings. But Marimer was tied for top 3 in scoring, and then Vanica in goal was 3rd in save percentage, both dropping a little bit. Nordic Knights, though, still in a decent position. The Typhon Veterans find themselves in 5th, down 1 position. They do have the top power play percentage in the group at 60%, but they have the worst face-off percentage in the group at 27%. Rough, to say the least. And in 6th, down 1 position, HC Total Chaos with the, unfortunately, worst power play in the group. Technically, it has gotten better. Another game is filed in since I put this information on a sheet. Their penalty kill has also improved since I last looked. And I do still believe they have the top face-off percentage in the group as well. So, interesting run for them. Just outside, looking in, the Stockholm Vikings are up 2 positions. So, an okay start for them. The Red Falcons down 2 positions into 8th place. They do have the most hits in the group, but as a result, the most penalties, as showcased by Asevoa, who has the most PIMs in the group, or most PIMs in the league, I should say, but is tied for 1st in blocks. And then, of course, we called him out last week. Suomibo is still leading the league in total hits. So live by the physicality, die by the physicality. In number 9, Utilan Palasora, up 1 spot. The lowest goals for in the group at a 2.5. The worst goals against average at a 5.75. They've yet to have a power play chance, but they do have a perfect PK. This is another group of the team that dropped out. Nemesnovo will not compete this season. Group number 4, send in the Clowns. Clowns on ice take over the top spot, moving up 1 position with the top goals for in the group at 7.5 and the lowest goals against at a 1.83. They also have the top face-off percentage in the group at 60%, led by Patty, who is 9th in scoring with 40 points in 6 games. Incredibly impressive. HC Wolves down 1 spot from that top position. They do have the lowest power play in the group at just over 9% while having a perfect penalty kill. Key player for them is still in goal. It is Spetsnaz, who is 4th in save percentage, was 2nd. Obviously, though, more of a backup role. We'll see how much we continue to cover them. But certainly for the Wolves, looking like goaltending isn't going to be a problem this season. The Twisted Clowns hold at 3rd position. Key players for them, we have Itna, who is 8th in scoring with 43 points, was 3rd last week with 24, so a big week. The goal pace did drop off a little bit, though. And then in goal, you have Lipsy, their starter, who is 5th in save percentage with an 8.627. So decent look for the Twisted Clowns. Not the top clowns of the group, though. You have Mocha HC up by 3 to number 4, so a good week for them. The Flying Elbows drop by 1, despite having the top power play percentage in the group at 66%. They do have the fewest hits in the group, and you could argue, as a result, the fewest amount of penalty minutes in the group. So a team with some discipline there. Swiss Wolves Esports hold at number 6. They are tied the lowest face-off percentage in the group at 45%. Got to work on that a little bit. Marshalls down 2 spots to number 7. Wildcats Esports 2 up 2 spots from number 8, but have yet to have a power play chance in their 4 games. Strength of the Pack hold at number 9. They do have the most hits in the group, and as a result, the most penalty minutes in the group. And then Northern Lighters down 2 spots to number 10. It has been a rough start through 4 games for them. They have the lowest goals for in the group with 2, the highest goals against in the group at an 8.75, the worst penalty kill in the group at 47%, and they are tied for the lowest face-off win percentage in the group at 45%. And last but not least, everybody, it is group number 5 of our Neo division, starting off with Casanovat moving up 4 spots to take that top spot in the group with the best goals against average in group 5 at a 2.2. They also have the top face-off percentage at 60%. Key players for them, the 2 different Ronkus. You have Ronku 10, who is tied for 3rd in scoring with 48 points, while you have Ronku 83-17, tied for 2nd in D scoring with 29 points. And Stoney as well, if I'm not mistaken, 7th in scoring with 46 points, 2nd in goals with 33, and tied for 1st in assists with 30. So Casanovat off to a very good start. The Fallen Rangers in number 2, dropping down from the top spot. They do still have an absurd 9.38 goals for per game, with the top power play at 51.85% and a perfect penalty kill. Key players for them, we are yet again looking at Sebco, 1st in scoring in the league with 66 points, was 1st last week with 34, so do the math, and 1st in goals in the league with 36, maintaining that league-leading pace. They had 16 goals at the end of week 1, and they are tied for 1st in assist with 30. Unbelievable. You have Zaki there as well, 6th in scoring with 47 points, down from being in 2nd place, but still not bad. And then 5th in goals as well for Zaki. They were in 3rd at the end of week 1. And then Predator on the defensive side was tied for 1st in defensive scoring with 10 points, and is now 3rd in defensive scoring with 23. Still a really strong performance for a defender with 23 points in 4 games. Pretty ridiculous. In 3rd place, up 4 spots, Veliaskunta HC. Very good start for them, despite not having a power play opportunity. Key player for them is Maltsevi, who is 4th in defensive scoring thus far with 18 points and tied for 1st in defensive goals with 6. We move on to team number 4. The boys are back. They did drop down 2 spots this week, while the Ice Hockey Net Yetis dropped 1 spot. Good news for them, though. Fewest PIMs in the group. Team number 6, the Valtakunen Vihatulmats, up 3 spots despite the worst penalty kill in the league at 45% and the worst face-off percentage, I should have said, in the group, and face-off percentage in the group at 38%. Key player for them, though, is in goal, Monbezu. If I am not mistaken, I that's just my default go-to. You guys know this at this point. 2 games played, but a strong start. Actually, in fairness, it was 1 game played last I looked, and the numbers were good. Numbers are still decent here, though. Intrigued to see who gets the majority of the starts there. Team number 7, Sekatuli, down 4 spots with the lowest goals for per game in the group, the lowest power play percentage in the group, the most hits in the group, but also the most PIMs as a result. And then team number 8, Karhukisat, hold their position with the worst goals against average in the group, just barely over Sekatuli. And of course, we had one more team, DNF, the Czech-Slovak combination, whose name I had a hell of a time trying to pronounce last week. But that is it, everybody, as we have taken a look through all 5 tiers. Very intrigued, again, always by feedback for this. Am I going into too much detail? Let me know. Are these too long to consume? Probably in this world of short-form content. But hey, I do have fun looking around and seeing how everything is playing out. So again, make sure to tune in to SportsGamer every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 19:45 CET start time, 1:45 p.m. Eastern for my fellow North Americans. Again, if you are a licensed player holder and want to attend our live Elite Final at Assembly in February, make sure to go to sportsgamer.gg for all of that information. Make sure to share your clips using the hashtag ECL25clips on social media. And I think I covered everything, and if I didn't, we'll put up a graphic for it or run a video for it. Until next time, everybody, thank you very much for watching the Wraparound. My name is Toogie, and I'll see you next time.